Unatana Tokef is the defining piyut or poem of these holidays. It's where we reckon with our mortality, recognizing that everything ends. Who by fire, who by water, who by cancer, who by COVID. It's not just humans who are mortal though, but every human enterprise ultimately comes to an end. The Roman Empire lasted 1,480 years, and it ended. And the Ottoman Empire lasted 623 years, and it ended. The American Empire is only 244 years old, and our future is far from certain. In just a few weeks, we will take part in one of the central rituals of America, the election of our president. Voting and elections in America are far from perfect. Of course, originally, it was only white, property-owning men who had the vote. And it was more than 50 years into the American experiment when we had a president who was anything other than a white supremacist slaveholder from Virginia. But thanks to the efforts of patriots like Susan B. Anthony and Martin Luther King, the franchise, the ability to vote for our leaders, was expanded so that more and more of our people could vote for our leaders. But despite those tremendous efforts, the future is far from certain. Who by fire and who by water? Who by virus mismanaged and who by elections stolen? Who by endemic racism and who by pervasive misogyny? Who by tin pot dictators and who by fouling the only planet on which we have to live? There is so much at stake in this election. And I invite us now, as we prepare to hear Unatana Tokef chanted by Ellen, to contemplate as a spiritual exercise what steps we're going to take to vote and what steps we're going to take after the election. I am planning on voting on Monday, October 26th at Fishkill Town Hall at 807 Route 52 in Fishkill. And I invite you to make a plan for how you're going to vote, whether that's voting early, voting by mail, or voting in person on November 3rd. But beyond that, I invite you to contemplate what steps you're prepared to take in the event that this election is disputed or undermined by our political leaders. Around the world, people take to the streets when it's clear that their leaders are failing them. And I invite you to consider what steps you are ready and willing to take to ensure that the best of America endures. All human enterprises come to an end, even nation states. But this doesn't have to be the time when America ends, and it certainly doesn't have to be the time when America ends without a struggle. As a spiritual exercise, what are you willing to do to preserve the best of America? I invite you to contemplate this as Cantor Ellen leads us in Unatana Tokef, and afterward, we'll hear some thoughts and reflections on these issues from Eli Karetny. Eli is a member of BHA and a professor of political science at Baruch College in Manhattan. He lives in Cold Spring with his wife, Tali, and their children, Nomi and Maayan.
Unatana Tokef kedushat hayom ki hu nora ve'hayom uvot naseh malchutecha vayichon v'chesed kisecha v'teshev alav be'emet emet ki ata hu dayan u'mochiach v'yodea v'ahed v'chotev v'sofer u'moneh v'tizkor kol הנשכחות ותפתח את זה ספר הזיכרונות ומעליו יקרא וחותם יד כל אדם בו. ובשופר גדול ייתקע, וקול דממה דקה יישמע. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. כמה יעברון וכמה יברעון, מי יהיה ומי ימות, מי בקיצו ומי לא בקיצו, מי באש ומי במים, מי בחרב ומי בחיה, מי ברעב ומי בצמא. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. מי ברעש ומי במגפה, מי בחניקה ומי בסקילה, מי ינוח ומי ינוע, מי ישקיט ומי יטרף. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. מי ישלב ומי יתייסר, מי יעני ומי יעשיר, מי יושפל ומי ירום. ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעבירים את רוח הגזירה. ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעבירים את רוח הגזירה.
The Unatana Tokef is a story about a rabbi who was dismembered by Gentile authorities after reconsidering conversion. His dying words have become part of Jewish liturgy during the high holidays. The rabbi's deathbed poem has been interpreted as a reminder of the inevitability of death and an invitation to reflect on what it is we believe in while we live. I thank Rabbi Brent for asking me to say a few words about how a dying body, a dying political body, opens new space for exploring what we collectively stand for. As the firstborn son of immigrants to this country, I grew up believing that America's founding principles offer hope to so many who seek a better life. While I continue to be grateful for the opportunities this country has provided my family, I've developed a more nuanced understanding of the tensions embedded in our communal body. These ever-present tensions, long simmering and periodically bubbling to the social surface, now threaten to erupt and destroy us from within. Watching this unfold in the context of a pandemic and a protest movement fills me with fear and foreboding. I fear for the health of my body and my mind. I fear for the well-being of my family. And I fear that my country's ideals, never consistently applied and always privileging certain groups at the expense of others, are being betrayed by those who reject progress and diversity, those who seek to embolden the worst elements within our convulsing body politic. The America deserving of my family's love is being dismembered, destroyed. But so what? Maybe my childhood fantasies about the American dream were just beautiful lies meant to veil the ugly historical truths about white supremacy, labor exploitation, imperial domination. Shouldn't a country that masks its racism and oppression with democratic rhetoric be allowed to die, nay, be put to death? This view is just as one-sided as the counter-narrative I once fully embraced. The story my parents told me about our exceptional nation, a new promised land where freedom and opportunity are available for any and all. Both views contain elements of truth, and both views are wrong in their totalizing self-conception. As the blast from the shofar signals a call to the supreme source of all life and meaning, we open ourselves to the highest judgment. Will our collective journey continue? Does our social body deserve to live on? Are we confronted with the prospect of impending death? The America I was taught by my immigrant parents to believe in is dying, even though it never truly existed for so many. But the America I was taught by my professors turned colleagues to revolt against also never existed. The America deserving of our attachments declared its values at our birth, even though it never fully embodied them. Even as the American body confronts the death of its empire, the ideals of freedom and equality will live on. In these days of judgment, let us remember that finite bodies die, but our highest ideals endure. As we enter a new year, let us search within and without for ways to express and embrace those ideals. Shana Tova.